Welcome back to part two. Gonna go over audience-related rhetorical challenges. So, working from our understanding of audience as more of a holistic, conceptual being, and not just who's literally there, who's literally hearing my message, we want to think about what the obstacles are between you and the audience. The first major challenge is inattention. At first glance, you're probably thinking about, okay, our attention spans are very short. And that's not a lie, but this is really about, and I mean, it's related. We are bombarded with stuff all day long. And so part of our short attention spans come from the fact that we're overwhelmed with stimuli. So it's a challenge to be one message of a billion messages that we are taking in on a daily basis. How are you going to stand out from the rest of them? So y'all are a captive audience for me. However, I don't know how many of you even watch these videos because you've got a bazillion other things to do. So from my perspective, there's only so much I can do to grab your attention. And I'm not super into gimmicks or things that are, I don't know, really, I don't want to sound like I'm a boring person, but there's only so much I can do to capture your attention because at the end of the day, I'm battling a lot of different things. And the same is true when you're coming up with your messages. And yes, you're not graded on how captivating you are attention wise, but you do need to think about how you can grab our attention. And so just to reiterate, you're not graded on, whether or not your audience is just like super glued to the screen, but what are you doing to try to overcome that inattention? Second, we've got misperception. So our attitudes and beliefs kind of act like a filter. We perceive messages through our own frames of reference. So in the last module, we did talk a little bit, I think, I'll have to make sure that I don't need to record another video, about the differences between attitudes and beliefs. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't think I have a video about this. So quickly, an attitude is a very surface level reaction. I like this, I don't like this. And those attitudes are based on beliefs. So I don't like this because it goes against my religion, it goes against my political beliefs, it goes against just what I think about education or whatever it is. We have attitudes that are based on beliefs, and beliefs are just things that we think to be true. And that doesn't mean they are objectively true. In fact, they're not objectively true, but to us, they are. They are the true things. We believe them. And there's a lot of variation in beliefs. And these are based on values, which we're going to come to in a little bit. So we perceive any message through these frames. And if a speaker is talking about something that we kind of have a negative attitude toward, we are more likely to misinterpret the message. And that's just psychology. That's not necessarily saying that anybody is stupid or anything like that. We just make shortcuts in our brain to process things more efficiently. And so if we hear something that goes against our beliefs, we often misinterpret it. And I do think we talked about confirmation bias several weeks ago in terms of we seek out information that confirms what we already believe. So if we're listening to something that is not confirming what we already believe, there is a challenge with making sure that the audience is truly understanding what the speaker is saying. lack of motivation. So this is kind of connected to inattention, but this is deeper. So our needs and our values are really, really deep and prevalent to us. Attitudes are a product of these things. So when we think about needs, I have a slide and a few slides about Maslow, and we'll talk about that. But values are those deep things that have to do with morality, right and wrong. What do we care about in, what does a life well lived look to us? How does that look? And those are really deep and very hard to change. So beliefs are hard to change, but they're not impossible to change. Values are very difficult, if not impossible to change, unless that audience member has had a transformative experience. Like, values can change, but it's hard to change someone else's values, if that makes sense. So those are the things that motivate us. If we really care about something, if something is really deep to like the core of our being, we're motivated to listen, we're motivated to act. But if it's not, we're not motivated. And that ultimately leads to inertia, which is that it's easier to do nothing than it is to do something. So how can we overcome this? It's easier to just be still and not do anything, especially if there are messages that are conflicting with our values. And you can see how these challenges progress in difficulty. So overcoming inattention is relatively easy. It's not that it's, very easy, but relatively easy compared to inertia, which is literally, I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to care. I don't want to listen. And we're seeing that a lot now with political discourse. And there are lots of reasons for that. People are disgusted. People are just really disappointed with the way things are. And that can be a barrier to action. Like, for some, that really motivates people to do something, but for others, it makes us close up and give up. And not to get depressing about it, but I mean, that's just how it works. So in terms of needs, you may have seen something like this, a graphic that looks something like this, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm not going to go into each one of these. The point being, the base there, physiological needs, those motivate us the most. So if our air, water, food, shelter, if that is in danger, we're motivated to do something. And we can hear appeals to this all the time in terms of, climate change. There's no clean water in Flint still, and other things like that. Just basic physiological needs motivate us. Safety is very similar. And we see these appeals with gun reform, and the appeals go both ways, right? Pro Second Amendment, we need to protect ourselves, anti Second Amendment, or Second Amendment reform, thinking about, let's think about schools and things like that. So we see these appeals all the time, and the lower they are on this hierarchy, the more convincing they are. And something that folks on the left often are appealing to are things like love and esteem and self-actualization. And those are really lofty and not concrete. Safety, physiological needs, those are really concrete. So when you take the Moral Foundations questionnaire during this module, you're going to see how these different needs and values kind of break down in terms of liberal, conservative. And obviously it's not just black and white like that, but you can kind of see how they fit. So That is all for this one. In the next video, I'm going to go deeper into values in terms of universal and particular values and how they relate to needs.